you guys can talk if you want.
Well, if you guys want to continue talking about how good the Cubs are doing this season, that's totally fine with me. I'm really enjoying that conversation.
What's our record?
We're 10-2, and yeah, we're feeling pretty chesty at the moment, Mac. It's yeah, we haven't had a start like this since like the 40s, I think.
So you're hoping for a shutdown, huh?
It's all good. That's Cubs luck right there. With Cubs luck,
exactly.
he's going to get shut down any minute. So
that'll leave the Sox in last place, which is fine. Whatever. They're sucking. Spoken like a Red Sox fan right now, right? Ah, screw them. They suck. All right.
yeah, Chris, my wife still says the Fenway Frank best hot dog in baseball. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I would agree with it. I would also venture to say that the Dodger dog has its place in my stomach as well.
You're supposed to say "do your dog."
Oh yeah, the Dodger dog. I love that, man.
Lawyer.
The Doyers.
So somebody's using your login to come and watch with us.
Uh-oh. I sent something out to my family that might have
Yeah, they need to use the public link. Otherwise, got
I'll shoot a message out
you're
to
listening.
Yeah,
Hey.
I have a lot of family. I'm number 9 of 10 kids, so I'll just go ahead and
Yeah, right on. They're off now. All right, Steve and Martha Hewitt are viewing again from Columbus, Ohio. Here comes another person coming on here, Matt. So for joining us. Oh, they're drinking Mac's Paper Street Vineyard 27. Hi, Matt. Right on.
About wine and oops, there's Uncle Matt.
Oh, here we go.
Uncle Matt's famous now.
Hey, buddy boy, you're famous.
She's trying to use the public login.
When Matt says he's going to send something to his family, that's like 250 people.
Yeah, Chris, sorry about that. That could have happened a lot today, just for the record. I'm number 9 of 10 kids, and yeah,
Each of them has 10 kids.
Yeah, so funny though. Here's another one.
Yeah. There's my sister Suze. Hi, Suze.
Hey.
All right, you've got to count.
Suze, you have to use the public link, not Matt's panelist link.
Okay.
Or go
Adios.
to
Love ya.
Facebook.
Nice to meet
I'll
you,
cut
though.
down on my heckling then. So.
Yeah, please tell us some funny stories.
Yeah, well.
Got plenty. Don't worry about it. All right, Suze, but you got to jump off and you got to get on another link.
Okay.
All right, love you.
Love you. Bye.
And then I'm not sure who your other one is on here too, Matt. Oh, there they go. All right. Cool.
Yeah, just cancel them out, Chris, and I just sent them a sibling text out to everybody, so sorry about that. There's my dad. The big
So
boss
good.
just showed up.
I
There
love
he
that.
is.
Oh, there's
Senior.
your dad.
Yeah.
What's up, Joe?
Hey, Joe.
You brought in the reliever, I see.
Oh yeah, he's just making. He's always watching, always judging. So.
Make sure.
All right. Okay, we're a few minutes in here, and I think we're probably good to go. We got a bunch of people joining us on here. It looks also like Bruce and Julie Kirshner from Lake Mary, Florida, and they're drinking the Wells and Division right now. Sweet.
Cheers.
Right on. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I see a lot of our regulars on here. Well, but we also have a few of the Dusis joining in, rightfully so, since we're talking about their vineyard. So thank you for joining us, Janelle and Dante, and maybe Matt's on there too. I don't know. And of course, some of those regulars from all over the country joining in as well. And so thank you for joining us once again. So today, thank you and welcome to today's Hangout, Paso Wine Hangout. I'm Chris Toronto. I'm with the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance. And we're going to be hanging out today with a couple of winemakers who are all producing wines from a very similar location, the Paper Street Vineyard. I had the good fortune of visiting the Paper Street Vineyard recently. I took a bunch of pictures. I want to share those today too. But I call this show the Becoming an Iconic Vineyard, the Paper Street Vineyard story, because this place is just super cool. And we've got some really amazing vineyards all around Paso. This is probably one of the newest. And I feel like I'm potentially even going to be doing more of these types of shows and looking at some of the other vineyards in town that are really iconic eventually. But I'm starting with this one. It just sounded like a really great idea. And honestly, I just really wanted to visit Paper Street too, so I got to. Our brands that are joining us today, we've got Edgar Torres from Bodega de Edgar. We have Matt Glunz from Glunz Family Winery and Cellars. When that says family, yeah, there's a lot of if you've been watching since we just started broadcasting. And then Mac Myers from McPrice Myers Wine Company. I'm going to start off, I've introduced everyone, but I'm going to start off with letting everyone else introduce themselves and tell us a little snippet about their brand. Hey, Mac, why don't you go first?
So McPrice Myers Wines. I started this brand back in 2002 at a custom crush facility down in Santa Maria with this idea of making Rhone wines and not much else. Took my life savings, bought some barrels, bought some grapes, and went on this journey. Fast forward until 2008. We moved the winery to Paso Robles and really kind of never looked back. Moved out to a property in 2014, and we are still here now, a beautiful 84-acre ranch in Adelaide District, and still doing what we do, focusing on Rhone varieties. Also doing a little bit of Zin and Cab now, and kind of doing what Paso does best. And it's been a fun journey. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to hear a lot more about your journey here as we go. So
yeah.
Matt Glunz, tell us a little bit about yourself and your brand.
Sure. I'm Matt Glunz, and I am fourth generation of my family's business. So we're actually relatively new to Paso. We bought our property in November of 14, and then my brother and myself and my parents moved out here in the following year, just in time for the vintage of 14. And yeah, so my great-grandfather founded a little wine and beer bottling business on the north side of Chicago in 1888, so 130 years ago, or 132. And we sort of have a rule in our family: if you want to work in our family business after you graduate from college, you get kicked out for at least 3 to 5 years, and you are not allowed to work in the family business. And there's a bunch of different stipulations, but you're really pushed out of the business. Don't do it just because dad did it and grandpa and great grandpa did it. Go do something that you're passionate about, and go do something that you're good at, and so that nepotism doesn't really take over the family business. And so my brother and I did ours in production. So we moved to Oregon and made wine in Oregon, and then moved to Sonoma and made wine in Sonoma, and then moved back to the wholesale wine business, which is now our main business, our family's main business. And I realized quickly that selling wine was not my was not my forte. And so yeah, we really started building up this little brand and built it up to the point that we could buy a winery. And I have to say, the reason why we're in Paso is because of these two guys. But Barrel 27 Cab or Grenache, my brother Stephen and I would drink that stuff Sunday dinners. We would drink that and be like, how are they making this at this price? Like, this value is so insane. And that's literally the reason why I'm here, is because that wine and many wines that these guys have produced. And it's just an incredible community. So.
Right on. Thanks, Matt. Edgar, bienvenidos. Welcome.
Gracias. Yeah, I mean, I've been around the area since 2002. I had the opportunity to go from working at a restaurant here locally that had a 21-year career called Villa Creek. The owners have Villa Creek Cellars. So I came into the community just following my family from Cambria over to here, and just kind of putting myself through college. I found myself in that little fork on the road about finishing school or, just diving into it. And I had the opportunity to really just take the little savings I had for transferring over to Cal Poly, which I took the alternative route, and I was doing this already and I loved it. So 2005, I got to experiment with Denner Vineyard Grenache that my friend, you know, God rest his soul now, Sean Mitchell, had a project he was making over at Garrettson Wine Company, where I kind of started scraping, you know, my way into it that way, and got to clean after some of those guys as they were kind of leaving the nest that they created into some successful projects. And Augie Hug was a sweetheart that kind of let me go into his place and make wine with him and work for him for about 4 years. And I had the opportunity to work with McPrice Myers, and as well as his former partner, Herman Story, Russell Frome, when they were doing Barrel 27, moving it up to Paso. So it became a very tight niche community. And from the beginning, I knew I was going to be naturally different than everyone else. But the last name Torres was kind of the more of the conductive idea of being a little different by focusing on the Spanish varieties, opportunities that we could do here, and playing with Tempranillo. And every time I made Grenache, I called it Garnacha. And yeah, kind of went from a 4-barrel project now to, you know, we're crushing close to 80 tons a year. And it's kind of a fun journey that keeps growing, and we hope to be part of the community for as long as I can carry it, till either my kid takes it over or the team that I'm building will continue it on.
Cool. Right on. Well, thanks, Edgar. Thanks for joining us today. So again, I'm calling this show Becoming an Iconic Vineyard. I see a bunch of people have just joined us, and so I'm reiterating what the show title is here. And we're going to be talking about the Paper Street that is really this new project for the Dusi family that was only recently planted well, back in 2014. And so now this vineyard has really come a long way in becoming this kind of sought after fruit source for so many winemakers in town. I believe they have 11 different varieties that are grown there, and just such a dynamic vineyard. So I invited these guys to come on and talk about the wines that they make that are sourced, or at least the fruit is sourced from the Paper Street Vineyard. I'll put those up here on the screen in just a second so everybody can see what we're having. But I also have a lot of really great imagery to offer as well from my visit. And like I said, this was only recently developed, and Mac actually had a lot to do with the development of this vineyard. Mac, talk a little bit about that.
Well, let me correct that a little bit.
Sure.
I didn't pull out one tree or bulldoze what, you know. I didn't plant one plant, but you know, I was extremely fortunate and blessed to have Matt Dusi approach me and said, hey, we got this really cool project up at the top of Kyler Canyon, which I kind of knew that area a little bit about being as rugged as it gets, you know, at the, you know, kind of way up there in the hills. And it was interesting. I went up there, and just like most people do, completely fell in love with it. And I decided I was gonna take a big chunk of it, not knowing how it was gonna be, but I knew that it was gonna be really high quality fruit just by location alone, and then of course the farming acumen of the Dusi family. That's a kind of a no-brainer. We ended up taking 52 acres. We have 8 red and 2 white varieties. And what I think you're referring to is we were able to pick the blocks, and we were able to really get a very diverse, different facings, different exposures, different clones, different varieties from all over the vineyard. So when we go in the cellar and taste through all the Paper Street lots, I mean, they're all so different. And I say relative to Paper Street, but they're all so different, you know, color, different structure, I mean, aromatic profile. and it really gives me a lot of components to blend with. But the bottom line is, I was really fortunate for Matt to allow me to put my 2 cents in, so to speak, on where things were put in the vineyard, where things were planted, and pretty happy about that. And fast forward to 2020, and as we're tasting through the 19s in the cellar, every year I'm really pleased with the quality of fruit and what we're getting out of this vineyard. So pretty excited, pretty fortunate for sure.
Let's go back to, whoops, there it is. So here are the wines that we're drinking, everybody. We've got the Bodega de Edgar 2017 Tarragona. We've got McPrice Myers Paper Street red wine, and then the 2017 Zinfandel Paper Street from Glunz family. Mac, is this the first time though you've done put Paper Street right smack in the front of the bottle, square and center?
No, this is the 3rd vintage of this red wine we've made. We made it in 2016 was the first, and we actually make this. This is our kind of our tête de cuvée. This is our cuvée, like our best barrels from the ranch for red wine. We make a straight Claret Blanche. We also make a wine called Beautiful Earth, which is all from Paper Street, which is a white wine with Grenache Blanc and Claret Blanche. And then we also make a Zinfandel, single vineyard Zinfandel, which is our first Zinfandel ever made in 2018, and we're super pleased with it. You know, after tasting through the barrels over a few years, I realized that if I was going to make Zinfandel, it was going to be from this ranch. It's super exotic, super exuberant, highly aromatic. It's just everything, you know, that I was looking for in Zinfandel, and it's quite amazing. We're
Nice.
very pleased with it.
Very cool. Matt, it looks like you have another family member joining us on the on the panel.
Oh yeah, just sorry, Chris.
So great.
Yeah, they're spread all over the country too, so it's just gonna keep. Well, Mac, is your red Beautiful Earth, is that actually from Paper Street as well?
No, it's probably about 50% from Paper Street,
Okay.
and then the rest comes from, you know, little bits of everything else that's in the cellar. But the
So
the idea of Paper Street, of taking that much acreage off Paper Street was we wanted to make it a big chunk of the Beautiful Earth wine for sure.
Yeah, we had to be a little nervous. I mean, that wine has obviously got a following, and to just change vineyards. Obviously, the quality speaks for itself, so it doesn't really matter. But that was such a, it's such a killer wine, and then to move it obviously seamlessly to vineyard is a little dramatic, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no, I mean, the idea behind that wine is representing West Side Paso. Now that we've had some luck and some nice quality wines with Cabernet and Zinfandel, obviously, which I just mentioned, and these other varieties that we've been getting off of Paper Street. We've included all those in the Beautiful Earth wine now, which is great. Just added a few more layers. I mean, you remember, you've known that wine for a long time. That wine was always Syrah, Grenache, Mourvèdre, and now by incorporating, Cabernet, a little bit of Graciano, a little bit of maybe some Petit Verdot, Petit Syrah. We co-ferment a lot of Claret Blanche with Zinfandel from Paper Street, which adds another layer to it. It's great. It's really just kind of more in your tool belt, more in your spice box for sure.
So, hey, Matt Glunz, how did you kind of come across the Paper Street Vineyard, and how did your little kind of journey of discovering fruit there go?
Well, a lot of what we do, I mean, there's no genius to what we do by any means. We just try to look at people and follow flavor, really. I mean, that's really how we try to operate. And, being relatively new here, we just, being able to work with Mac and Edgar very early on. I mean, these guys, this is one thing I really loved about being in Paso, is that it reminds Stephen and I a lot about being in Oregon in 98, 99 when we were in Oregon, that it's like everybody here pretty much plays for Team Paso, and that's pretty cool relative to some other areas, that people aren't as willing to share. And so, but one of the main reasons why we wanted to work with the Dusi family, and we grew up drinking a lot of Ridge wines, and that's always been kind of an inspiration for my brother and I. And And so Dusi Vineyard, more Benito and Dante, was something that we really wanted to work with. So in 16, I think in 15 so 16 was our first vintage that we got fruit off of Paper Street, but it was originally because Dante came in a little bit light, and Matt just said, hey, by the way, there's a little bit of other fruit from up in Paper Street. And like, I'm pointing at my dad, but who's right over here, by the way. Pops is saying hello. My dad and my brothers and I went up to check out the site, and you just fall in love with it right away. And it's like, man, show me where to sign. I mean, when you walk through this vineyard, literally your boots turn white. I mean, your brown boots are white by the time you walk through this vineyard. It's pretty remarkable. And so when there was an opportunity to get on board, and especially get on the ground floor, we could not have been more excited, and especially to be making Zin from up there. I mean, it's what Michael Dusi does so incredibly well, and all the Dusi family. Janelle obviously on the making side, but Michael on the growing side, and so yeah, we had the opportunity, and it's honestly been so much fun because we source from Dante, closer to town, on a little bit of lower elevation, and then being able to source same grower, same clone of Zin from up at Paper Street. It's been really, really cool, and we've gotten a little bit of Grenache throughout the years, and now we'll get a little bit more Grenache, which is awesome. That wine just right off the bat had a following, and I think our Paper Street Grenache we made in 16, I think we still get phone calls. It sold out in 18, and we still get phone calls like, when is that Paper Street Grenache coming out? I'm like, we're working on it. But no, it's just a remarkable site, and that was initially just wanting to work with Dusi fruit, and then through working with the Dante Dusi Vineyard, and then having the opportunity to then say, hey, by the way, there's some fruit available at Paper Street, and it's just been awesome. So
yeah, that's great. We had a quick question already about Paper Street and how it got its name, and I wanted to put that out there really quick. So it's a county road that actually accesses the vineyard itself. It's this dirt road. It's really crazy, actually. Matt took me on Mr. Toad's wild ride to get there recently, and I was in a little four-wheeler thing, and yeah, that was fun. Anyway, when a road, when a road exists on a map and it isn't a real road, it's called a paper street, apparently, and so that's partly referencing that. They're also referencing something from the Fight Club movie. So that's basically how it got its name. So hopefully that answers your question out there in Facebook. So Edgar.
It's kind of fun. I mean, right now I've been drinking all day. I did a couple other Zooms this morning, and earlier this morning I drove up there with my latest addition to the team, the winemaking team up there, that needed to see it. So, I mean, it takes me back. I worked with Mac for about 7.5 years. He's the big brother that I had for that longevity there, and it's kind of fun to see what the vineyard is becoming. I was his assistant winemaker, and I remember getting the exciting call for Matt Dusi to get him up there, and we went up there. I was his right-hand person, so at the time he gets the call, so he goes up there, he's planning, and he's like, well, I grew up in the industry working for Garrettson, which did a lot of just Paso Robles fruit. Then I went to work with Augie Hug, who was doing Cambria, Monterey County fruit, and Santa Maria Valley. So I found myself a lot driving after I started working with Augie Hug. And great experiences to get to meet more friends around the community and stuff, and up and down the state eventually. Working with Mac and Russell at the time too was like, they had stylistically different projects going on. Jointly they had the Barrel 27, but like, so Mac, there was a couple of vineyards that coincided that Mac and Russell were harvesting from, and so it kind of was cool. But then like Russell had other vineyards that Mac wasn't getting, and Mac had vineyards that Russell wasn't working. So, I mean, I think I jumped on the team around 2009 and moved on in 2015. But the fun thing about it is like, it was cool. I was still young. I was driving around a lot with them. We would wake up early in the morning, go check out vineyards in Santa Barbara, and go into San Ynez, and then like try to make all the way the drive back home. And so for the biggest time, it was fun. And I just ended up saying, you know what, like, this is cool. But then Mac started kind of reining it in, and he's like, you know, he started working with more Paso fruit. And when we got that call, I was also kind of trying to do the same thing. And I actually drove up there with Mac as his assistant winemaker at the time. And we were just, you know, I'm like super excited for him. I think the terrain spoke to us it was like two kids in a candy store, and Mac so more so than anything, because he's like, I need to fulfill the needs and the growth of the project. And like, you know, it's so cool if we just get this 105 acre land. I could easily take 60 acres. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then Matt Dusi invited us up there. I got the opportunity to go, and just like my blessing in my life, I've been blessed to be around the right time at the right place with the right people. And I'm just kind of, you know, just sitting there listening to what Mac and I had a plan on the truck, and he was kind of bouncing his ideas of where he wanted to go with this project. And I get up there and I just see this, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. You're on top of the world. You're looking to Law to the north. You're looking to the south side. You're kind of seeing the fence line down to La Ventura and Booker. And then you're seeing Viking Vineyard getting clear. Like Viking Vineyard is next where the big block of Cabernet the Dusi's planted up there. And you're seeing Glen Rose. So we both fell in love with it. It was exciting. And then I'm just kind of standing there. And I was telling my staff this morning that as I was driving the vineyard, there is a spot where I remember Matt Dusi and Mike Dusi look at me like, what do you want? And I'm like, I'm here with Mac. Like, I'm just making sure we take care of what we're doing. It's like, yeah, but we got room. What do you need? And I'm like the pain in the butt. I'm like, I want the steepest hills for Tempranillo. And I'm a dreamer. There's an observatory here. Just, you know, it needs to be planted around. I'll take some Kenyan or whatever you're going to plant around there. So yeah, I spoke for, I think it was the beginning stages. It was about 9 acres, and now I'm kind of pretty lucky and blessed to be speaking for about 12 acres up there. So it's an awesome site. It made my life and my job now easier, where the majority of my fruit comes from there. So that was kind of what I was trying to accomplish, is coming back into the town and really, you know, being able to produce the best wines that I can with a really spectacular site like that. And it's made life a little bit easier.
I'd love to put in context for everybody watching where the vineyard is, and then just share a few pictures. And then after that, maybe we'll come back around, take some wines, and talk a little bit about what this vineyard does for these wines, and how these wines are capturing that sense of place. So real quick here, let me kind of jump back into that. All right, so here's the AVA map. And so if you're familiar with Paso, the city of Paso is here. This is the Willow Creek district. And what we're talking about is basically a good part of the Willow Creek district that is, I believe, up in this little section here. And if I'm wrong, Matt Dusi text me, but it's right in here. That is that part of Willow Creek, that is where the Paper Street Vineyard is. And it is on the top of a couple of hillsides. And so, oops, let's go the other way here. There's the lines. I'm wrong. Matt says I'm wrong. Darn it, Matt. It's over here. I don't know. Now I'm just pointing and pecking. It's somewhere in there, right? But it's
the line right there in the, that line is Kyler.
Right here. This is Kyler, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so then it's not in the corner. It's more like kind of almost in the center here.
It's kind of where the LES part of the Paso Robles is. It's up there.
Over here. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. So as much as I know. Now I learned something. So over here in the LES. Thank you. And so it is really close to town, amazingly as it sounds, but yet you really feel like you are absolutely out there. One of the things that I took from the vineyard was, I love taking rocks from vineyards. Here is a piece of that calcareous, bordering on limestone. It does have a lot of calcite in it. I'm not sure it's all the way there, because I'm not sure that it is crystallized in that mineral form of dolomite yet either, but I think it's close. But this stuff is everywhere. It's in rock form. It's almost in dust form, but it's still a really dynamic vineyard. Here's a shot kind of, up the top-ish of the vineyard. One of our first stops actually that we had. My son Joe actually took those pictures. Pretty cool, but just absolutely beautiful in how there's just so much texture here as these hills and these hilltops roll on to the next one and the next one. So you can see this further hilltop here, this near hilltop, and we're standing on this one here. Of course, lots of oak trees, being Paso Robles. There's oak trees everywhere, right? The steepness that you were talking about, Edgar, I think this kind of captures it. With the white soil mixed in with some of the brown alluvial or somewhat loamy soil. But the steepness is just incredible here. So you can see how up here where the trees are, this is down canyon, kind of where we were just almost only moments before. And then we get around a corner and the soil completely changes and it becomes this really brown, kind of definitely more of a sandy loam or a clay loam soil actually, but this is at the bottom of the hill. And then as you go up towards the top, it definitely becomes whiter. But I just thought this was amazing to see, and definitely, just some cool spots all around this vineyard, right? Guys, chime in if you have anything to say about it.
Yeah, so where you were at right there, that's the bottom of our block of Syrah.
Okay.
Which is about 8 acres, just under 8 acres. And yeah, extremely steep, very long rows. And the soil does change from top to bottom as well. Up on the top, it's a little bit more shale, very little topsoil. And as you go down the hill, more topsoil, a little more loamy clay. And you can tell by the shoot growth and the growth of the vine, kind of, a little more loamy, a little more growth. The stuff on the top kind of struggles a little bit more. So we try to pick those separate when we can. And then this photo that you have on the screen is going into this really cool block that, people were unsure about planting Grenache here as far as just, it's a little bit heavier soils going from north to south. So you have this north facing slope that we're looking at, and then it kind of crowns and then goes back to the south. What I liked about that was when we picked the whole block together, you're going to have, number one, with the clay soils, a little loamier clay, you're going to have a real incredible roundness to the wine, and voluptuous opulent style. But also you're going to have the north side is going to provide this cool spice and aromatics and floral component. And then the south side is going to be a little bit more brooding, a little bit richer, a little bit more, powerful, and everything in between. So when we pick this block, we ferment it all together and you get all of those elements, which is great. And kind of what I anticipated happening so far has been what we've been seeing from that block, which is great.
Awesome. That's great.
I think one of the funnest things to show the different soils composition going on at the vineyard, it is drastically different. It's not consistently all the way across. It's not like we were fighting over the soil itself. We were like, there wasn't any fighting it. The fun thing about like trying to plant what needed to be exposed to the sun a little bit more directly, even though it's pretty exposed to the elements up there. The wind is an issue. The sun exposure is, this is the Tempranillo. It started on the ground like head train, but then it was suffocating, just vigorously growing because it naturally wants to do that. And it was draping itself on the floor. So it had a hard time breathing. So we had to put it up in a wire. But one of the funnest thing is that I like to work with my farmers. I like to make life easy for myself and for them as well. And this is that picture where you were at, it's almost, it's close to one of the blocks of Grenache that we have next to Max Syrah. And Matt Dusi last year was like, we're sitting down and renegotiating things for the longevity and adding a couple more acres. He was like, hey, can I put your 2 blocks of Grenache together? And I'm kind of like, I don't want to do that, because the first picture you keep showing with the oak trees is from the block of Grenache that, like, if you were standing looking that way out there right now, behind you is a fence line to the west of the vineyard. So I have the first like 6-7 rows, and Mac has the following rows down. And so Matt Dusi was like, hey, can you take all, and can we put you over here all together? And I'm like, I don't know that I want to do that, because I picked the block that we're looking at separately. And then I picked the block of Grenache next to Max Syrah later on a little bit, usually a couple of weeks or 3 weeks sometimes in separation of timing. But the soils are so different and the exposure is so different that the wines become that different. This block that we're staring at is normally the majority of the wine that I use for the one that we're drinking, the Tarragona, which is our Grenache blend driven from up there. And so the two Grenaches are different, even though they're on the same vineyard. Just the exposure layout is different, the soil composition is different. So this vineyard has a diversity of sun exposure, soils, and it's kind of cool the way it showcases even within its own varieties being related.
Well, Mac, I always thought it was interesting when you and I were starting to talk about this vineyard, about kind of some of your site selection, and you were just saying, you know, listen, it's Paso, it's sunny, it's warm, everything's going to ripen here, and kind of your brain, your winemaking brain says, oh, south facing, especially when you talk about Rhone, and you know, you think about northern Rhone and Hermitage and places like that. You're like, oh, the south facing, and it's like, no, you got to kind of change your brain a little bit. And you were just saying, you know, and in blending, you get both components, which is awesome. But you know, some of the more northern facing stuff, you're like, well, you're actually getting a little bit more balance and brightness off of that, and then you get that just big rugged fruit that you're getting off the south facing stuff. And I always thought, you know, every time I go up there, I'm always thinking of that as well. And it's such a cool, you know, and quite honestly, when we look everywhere, we think about that as well. Just kind of like everything's going to ripen in Paso. Ripening generally is not our problem. But actually balance and brightness, and obviously with these soils and everything that happens up there, acidity and ripeness, neither of them are a problem. And that's the beauty of the site as well.
No, I mean, you're exactly right. You know, when I was fortunate enough to pick out blocks of where we were going to plant these grapes, these different varieties, that's the idea behind it. Is you have to think that, just like you said, like, this is Paso, we're hot, warm area, we're going to get plenty of ripeness, but how do we not burn the fruit? How do we get freshness and vibrancy? How do we get hang time is the big thing that I was worried about up there, but with that high elevation and being above the fog line. How do we get hang time? And that's why I chose to kind of get some of these areas, north facing, east facing, and even that block that Edgar's talking about with the Grenache, you know, the section that we have is much more loamy and protected and has a lot more shade from the trees. Even though it's south facing, it was just one of those things where I just wanted to, I wanted to have, I mean, look, it's a rugged site that's going to produce extremely, you know, exotic, powerful, you know, full throttle, you know, wine. But if you could just dial it back a bit and have a little more finesse, you know, you could have an incredible wine. And I think that's what that vineyard's all about.
I think you're right. The wines are so big and impacting and so concentrated naturally because of the terrain, the drainage that it has, that I had a conversation with another guy who's making wine from up there, that he's kind of having a challenge to do a specific 100% standalone varietals. One, the vines are too young to kind of try to push it to be that refined. Secondly, we're in Paso, and look at that sunshine. There isn't a lot of shading going on into the 105 acres of the property that it has to offer, that a lot of it is exposed. I was up there this morning. Unfortunately, the last 2 heat waves that we had did do some sunburning on some of the clusters and some of the plants. So we will give big, voluptuous, big impact in wines. And I love the compliment that we get, I think, because I'm drinking Max wine. Max wine is big, balance. It has good fruit, good minerality, good acidity. It has the longevity of being laid down. I mean, you just bottled this, right? So
yeah,
Talk about it. Let's talk about these wines.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, for me, the funnest thing is, like, the soil screams that mineral, that acidity. And even though we're getting high sugar up there, it's still that we're combating, I think Mac, you can kind of talk about this too, but it's like we're combating the pH being so low sometimes, even with the bricks being so high and the acidity being very high.
Yeah, I mean, you're most of the time we're picking on acid, not sugar level.
Yeah.
We're you know, well, amongst other things. I mean, obviously you have to be careful because you're above the fog line, so you're gonna have some thicker skins up there. So you have to make sure that your tannins are really in check when you pick. So you have to be really careful with that. You know, but the acidity levels are so high up there. And it's funny, it's every time I take a barrel of something from Paper Street, after it goes through ML, it's the acid always increases. It's something that, you know, it always is higher than you think. And I attribute, you know, the soils are 8 to 8.5 pH. You're above the fog line, which means you get cold at night, which is retaining the acidity. And it's incredible. And also the varieties that were outside of Grenache, which is not known for being an acidic grape per se, but even up there, even Grenache that's not considered to be a high acid grape, it's full of acid and it's vibrant and it's floral and it's you know, has so much energy to harness, so to speak. It's incredible. And yeah, so, you know, there's many different elements that you're fighting up there. And we're just talking on the winemaking side. You can imagine talking to, you know, to Big Mike and Matt about what they have to do farming wise, because we do talk about that. And it's extremely difficult. Heat spikes affected up there way more. You know, just everything is just much more extreme. And, you know, and it shows in the wines. The wines have a bit of an exotic, you know, extreme edge to them. They're extreme in color and vibrancy and power, and everything's kicked up to 11 to take a bad reference from Spinal Tap, but that's what those wines are.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The beauty of those wines coming from up there, the complexity has layer after layer, right? Like the chemistry of the acidity naturally coming up that, like, it's crazy. And one of the techniques that we share of doing a little bit of whole cluster, you know, fermentation, it just, I guess for me, one of the funnest challenges I've had is like, you want to drop fruit to concentrate, but you don't need to. And you also want to shade it. But at the end of the day, like, the timing is so hard to do up there where Mike is struggling to stay right on top of it, because the exposure to the element is so hard for him to really navigate and also like stay truly on top of it, because these heat waves come unexpectedly. And, you know, as much of a challenge 2017 was with those heat waves, some of us still were able to produce some really good balanced wine. I think 2018 is a whole different ball game. I think 2018 was probably one of the better years that we've worked in general across the board here making wine. We were able to call the shots of when we wanted it to be picked, and that day was good. And we didn't have heat waves or droughts that really conducted more complexity to that vintage. And so 2019 shaped up to be a pretty good year, and I'm really excited what's in the barrel. For me, I played with Garnacha, Carignan, Grenache, Mourvedre, the Graciano, and the Tempranillo, and they're all uniquely different. They're like raising a nice, fun family. Some of them behave well one year. Some of them kind of take turns misbehaving the next year. And so it's just, they keep us on our toes. And I think that's kind of one of the intriguing things, that I like to stay on our toes with that vineyard up there, because right when you think we've taken something from the ground, put it on the wire, we think we have a solution. And it's like, no, it's like, it's just kind of fun to grow with this vineyard. So I'm excited to be part of it. And, you know, I couldn't thank the Dusis enough for letting us be part of this journey with them as well. And Mac, thank you for, you know, letting me be in the truck that day, because I was not expecting to be part of that program. And I'm glad my life kind of landed in the right spot with that vineyard. It's a fun vineyard that every year, whoever doesn't want to take an acre, I'm like, I'll take an acre more, because like we kind of grow a little bit more every year, and so it's like it's fun to play up there with one site.
Sure. So while you're talking, talk a little bit about this 70% Garnacha, 15 Carignan, 15 Tempranillo. The red fruit in this wine, it's so brilliant, great acid. It's a really delicious wine.
Thank you. I mean, I think it goes from overripe cherries and a little bit of cranberry going on in there from the Carignan. 2016 was my first vintage that I bottled and released from Paper Street, and it changed the dynamics of Bodega de Edgar. I had the blessing and opportunity to be in Spain that summer, and I had dedicated my first 10 years of making like 100% Tempranillo, 100% Grenache, and 100% Revered, and then like I had 3 blends, and I was pretty successful with them. But after being in Spain and going to the staple regions that really got me going, and I remember the first times I drank wine with Mac, and I was sharing my Mis Pasos, which is normally a Syrah, Tempranillo, and Merlot blend, and he's like, you're trying to be such a Monsanto producer. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of the guys that I've been drinking wines from, and that's kind of the inspiration of this journey for me. After being there, and I was drinking with René Van Vliet, or René from Mogador, and Carlet Prasada from Clos de la Bac, I was like seeing these iconic figures from the Purot region. And then Esther, who is the winemaker for Clos Adamos, was a sweetheart. We had met in 2005, and so we got to reconnect that year. I was drinking their wines, and I'm like, they're not purity of varieties, they're blends. And iconically, the Monsanto and the Purot region are known for 100-year-old vines of Carignan and Garnacha Tinta. But a lot of the iconic blends of the Monsanto also, you know, they blend Garnacha and Carignan, and they throw a little bit of Tempranillo. Sometimes they throw Merlot, they throw a little Syrah. And up in the mountains of Monsanto and Purot do the same thing. So I came home and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to make life a bit more effective and efficient. And working with this vineyard, yeah, it's a very useful vineyard, and it's such a big impact in wine that it's a little bit more of a challenge to make a purity of a varietal from the site, because the concentration is so crazy that, yeah, I wish consumers would buy this wines and let it sit for 5 years. Or the other hand is I wish I had the money to be able to bottle it and not release it for 3 to 5 years when I think the varietal expression comes out. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to follow the Spaniards that I fell in love with, and I'm going to name them after the regions or the cities that are meaningful from there. So this is 70% Garnacha Tinta with 15% Carignan and 15% Tempranillo, 100% Paper Street Vineyard. And it's just kind of a fun thing for me now. So I have the Tarragona, I have the Piorato, which is primarily Carignan driven blend. I have the Toro de Paso, which is my primarily Tempranillo blend. And then I have my Humilla. We had to change the name because they cut on to me. Humilla is a region in Spain. I can't use the name because of the region, so I call it. I
wondered if you got approval on any of these, Edgar. I'm like,
I did. It was the funnest thing. Is like 2016, I did them all, and I got approved. And then 2017, they're like, you can't use or Humilla, and I'm like,
hey, don't change that label, man. Don't change that label.
Well, trying to say with compliance, the blends have changed a little bit here and there, but they're always the consistency of it. I just bottled my 2018 Tarragona, and that one went down to 50-something Garnacha, and then equal parts Tempranillo and Carignan. And so, but that was kind of the fun thing, working with those vineyards up there, and really, you know, we all were in the hopes of producing what we wanted to produce, Monestral, but it turned out to be Graciano. And so we just kind of created a new project. We call it Gracias. It's a pretty cool label, and it's Graciano driven. But yeah, I'm super stoked to be up there. I'll be up there till the Dusis are tired of me. Hopefully never, but you know, it's a great site.
No, but it's interesting too. I mean, you talk about the parallels with Paso and I mean, when you go to northern Spain, I mean, you know, Toro and some of these other, I mean, it looks like Paso. I mean, it's, and now granted, once you get up to Paper Street, it's a little bit different. I mean, I didn't go to too many sites with that type of elevation and that dramatic, but northern Spain looks a lot like Paso. And so I just, the wines you're making and how they're tasting, I mean, it really does make sense.
Well, I think the biggest thing, thank you for, helping me give my thoughts back to the wine. The wine,
Hey, help, buddy.
they're big. The Toro region produces high octane, big concentrated, a little bit on the earthier side of things compared to the Rioja Ribera del Duero. But when you're talking pure rot region, Monson region, you're also talking about drastic elevation changes.
Yeah.
You're talking about drastic soil changes. You're talking about volcanic slate. Parts of the Monson Mountains look like you're in Utah with pine trees and everything. And I tell everybody, Monson and Pure Rot is very similar to the west side of Paso. You have change of elevations, you have steep hillsides, a drainage system that naturally produces some high concentrated octane stuff that is powerful. But the characters that are producing the wine on the west side are not much different than the guys in Monson and Pure Rot. And that's kind of fun going to hang out with Rene from Mogador. He's one of those guys that kind of scare the heck out of everybody driving them up into the mountain looking backwards on a little Scooby-Doo minivan look-alike. And so we're like, this guy's gonna kill us. But it's like running around with I don't know who to name from the west side right now, but one of those fun characters. But the wine itself it's big, very rich, fruit forward, but I think that minerality and acidity still carries the wine very well. So I hope you guys are enjoying it.
Hey, we had a question that I think, 2 questions from same person, but one is, so let's clarify this because we're talking about how you guys source fruit from this vineyard. And there's been kind of 2 questions at the same time almost that are along the same lines is that, so you guys are really hands-on on your blocks. So the blocks that you are basically purchasing. So quick question, well, to clarify is that you're purchasing the fruit. It's not, these blocks are not yours. This is the Dusi family's vineyard. And then how hands-on though are you on the farming specifically? Are you, or I mean, is it just trusting that the Dusi family is kind of doing what you want them to do from the get-go? Like, how does that work?
For me, sorry to interrupt and jump in, but
Yeah.
for me, one of the funnest things is like, this is as close as I'm getting to owning my own piece of property because we were able to start it. We were able to pick the rootstocks, the clone of the varieties, and kind of farming it either head train or whatever, the way we needed it. So in a way, at first we kind of gave them that guidance of the clones that we wanted, but ultimately for me, I kind of have let Mr. Dusi do a lot of his own farming that he's been doing for so long. I do try to give a little guidance here and there, but at times for me it's uncomfortable because I feel like I don't want to cuss disrespect because he's been doing it for so long. But it is a challenging site that I think we're all are learning. And more so than anything, I'll hand it over to Matt because he's the one that has more acreage up there that he controls. So,
yeah, to answer the question, we don't own the property at all. We have a contract that says we have a certain amount of acreage, and we have set rows that we can put our input on, but we don't own the property. But as Edgar was saying, I mean, the idea is that we collaborate as much as possible. But the bottom line is we all know that Big Mike Dusi has forgot more about farming than we know. That's it, bottom line. So when we're trying to explain ourselves and talk to him, and it's sometimes we it's a great conversation, and it's fun, but we lean on him because he knows more about farming than we'll ever know. And whenever we have some input that is helpful, we're happy about that. But ultimately, the family owns the property and they farm it, and they do an incredible job. And whenever we can throw our 2 cents in, we do. That's the kind of how we look at it. Considering we have so many acres out there, we're trying to have a little bit more back and forth, but the bottom line is that it's their land, and we're just fortunate enough to get the beautiful fruit that comes off of it.
I would say I very much kind of agree with Mac, where a buddy of mine, comes from a pretty successful family and family business, and my family's fortunate that we kind of belong to this group of family businesses that all collaborate and talk. And I just remember him saying, we just get the most qualified people for that position, and then we place them in that position, and then we try to let them through. So yeah, no, I'm not gonna. Like, we got Big Mike Dusi who's taking care of it, and we do get to say go on picking, but I just in general just try to be a little bit of a sponge in that situation and just absorb any input they have versus my input on what they have. So we just try to pick the best sites with the best growers that we possibly can, and in this site with this grower, best case scenario, and just let it go and just be excited about the fruit. And I think that's very much what we are. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, keep talking. We're getting close.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say is, like, Matt's exactly right. I mean, the idea is I wouldn't have contracted so much fruit out there from this really, really extreme area if I didn't feel that the Dusis knew how to farm exceptionally well. I mean, that's the bottom line. I'm not gonna, if it was just some new vineyard where I didn't know the vineyard manager or the owners or whatever, it would have been a little more difficult because you're unsure. But with the Dusi family, I mean, come on, their history speaks for itself. They're a great family, and they farm impeccably well, and I was very excited to be given the opportunity to work with them. So
one of the funnest things is that the family itself is so inspiring, because when we're out there during harvest, they have, from the youngest one, they can carry a bucket, helping out there carrying a bucket. And we have, a young Dante who is still going to high school at Templeton, like driving the trucks and driving the tractors on the vineyard, helping the family. So it is fun to be part of that hardworking family. And they've been doing this for so long that it's hard to kind of really like control or do anything that they already have been doing. And so for us, I think it's enjoyable. I really appreciate their work ethic and their focus behind it. And I think one of the funnest things for me with the family is, I've been able to grow with them the last 2 years, grafting Albarino on one of their properties, and speaking for some Cabernet Franc coming down the line and stuff, is that they know what they're doing. They are willing to be open to hear us. But I think that the end result of the product, what Mac is making, what the Glunz have been doing, even from Austin Hope using it out there too, I really love what Janelle's doing. I think Janelle was kind of one of the inspirations, and I wanted to touch on the guys that I'm glad that Mac is making a Zin. I'm glad the Glunz family is making a Zin, and Janelle is making a kick-ass Zin from up there. I mean, we're jumping in the pool with the Zin, an acre from it from up there this year. I think Zin might be making somewhat of a comeback, at least, a little bit more boutique production going on. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, right on. I want to jump in here and say that we did invite actually Matt Dusi to also come on with us today, but he declined, but that's all right. Gotta love Matt.
Well, he's quite tired of me asking for more fruit, so I can understand he didn't want to make that public. I'm like, please, buddy, please. How about some cab? Do you have any cab? I'd love some cab from up there.
But yes, and also we should mention that there is actually a Paper Street brand even that is a component of the J. Dusi wines that is called Paper Street, and that would be what Janelle Dusi is making as a Zinfandel that you just mentioned, Edgar. Hey, before we run out of time, and speaking of Zinfandel, Matt Glunz, talk a little bit about this wine.
Yeah, well, so that's our Paper Street Zin. So with the label anyway, we kind of went off of a newspaper. So going off of the paper idea was going off of kind of a newspaper graphic idea, and just there's so much information and so much history, obviously between our family being a 130 plus year old family business, and then the Dusi family farming in Paso since I think 1928. And so it was just kind of a fun idea for the packaging, and I think it's pretty cool. But this is actually, both of these guys had a part in this. But I just remember this vintage was 2017. I think we've talked a little bit about how the challenges of 2017. One challenge we had with this wine was my mom was getting an open heart surgery up at Stanford, right like Labor Day weekend of 17. And so things are kind of coming, and Zin comes from Primitivo. It's generally Primo, the first one to be ripened, and so man, we were spending our weekend up in Stanford, and it was like 100 degrees in Stanford, or up in the Bay Area. I'm like, holy cow, it's got to be really hot. So I called Mac, and I'm like, hey buddy, when you go up to Paper Street, would you mind sampling the vineyard? Steven and I, my brother, we do everything together. So I'm like, Stevie and I are kind of taking turns shooting up to Stanford and back, and would you mind taking a look at Paper Street for me? He's like, pick, call your pick. I'm like, oh God. We had back-to-back 113 degree days, and so we called the pick, and then Mac's like, yeah, Mac just called all his pick for all 50 acres. I'm like, oh great. It's like, so you're gonna have to wait a week. So this was one of the more challenging. I mean, I love how it turned out, and I think that I'm obviously we're very couldn't be more excited, but I'm happy how it turned out. But yeah, 17 for Zin. The early ripening varieties was a tough vintage coming off of that. I mean, it was like we're just charging early on, and then we kind of hit a little bit of a lull halfway through where everything just cooled off, and then kind of the Bordeaux varietals and other things that were coming off were like, oh sure, let's just pick this and let's pick that. But early on, it was just a madhouse. And so, especially, Mac, we're talking about above the fog line, and just some of the winds that come ripping through that site. And so, but I love how this wine came out. I mean, it's just so cool too to, again, like I was kind of referencing earlier, is to be able to have these two sites where this one picked. So, it probably is on the label, but within the first 10 days, I think, of September is when we picked this. And we didn't pick Dante, same varietal, same family farming, for like another month. I mean, we didn't pick Dante into October. And so
that's a lot lower elevation, by the way, for everyone watching, because the Paper Street gets up to about 1,600 feet. And then the Dante that he's talking about is a much lower elevation. Sorry.
But winemaking wise, it was actually, yeah, like I said, it was a little bit of a struggle, but then, it was, we're incredibly happy with it. I mean, it's, as Edgar says, I mean, it's funny because Grenache is becoming more and more hot as a variety, but Zin and Grenache are just kind of like so close to each other flavor-wise, blending-wise. We love blending Zin and Grenache together. I mean, this is 100% Zin, but we have taken Zin or Grenache from Paper Street and blended it in with Zin. The two of them just play really well together. But no, we're like everybody's saying. I mean, it's funny. It sounds like very much of like a professional athlete. I'm just happy to be here. Like we're all throwing that out of us. Like, I'm just really happy to be here and kind of when they get introduced to the new team. But,
thanks,
but we really
Mom.
are. We're just excited to be working with this fruit. And like Edgar and Mac has said as well. The 18s I think are very much more in that fashion of the style. I think a little bit more of what we'd like to make. Not that we do really enjoy the 17, but I think stylistically 18 is a little bit more of kind of where we're shooting for. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So.
Before we run out of time, I want to make sure that I ask you guys too, how is 2020 looking at Paper Street right now? Edgar, you were just up there earlier today, and I'm sure you guys have walked those vineyards and visited recently, but how's things looking? It's been a really cool year, by the way, everyone at home. It's been really interesting how cool it's been with just a couple little heat spikes. We just came out of one, but so go ahead, Edgar.
Well, I think the challenges of this year in its own, well, we have to kind of be dealing with everything that we're dealing with. I think a lot of us are kind of like, in a way thankful for everybody staying home and drinking, because we're moving through boxes. So we're like, now we're rushing to put things into the bottle. I took like maybe 2.5 weeks from being up there thinking, we're kind of a little behind, but then the little 2 heat waves that we had I got up there and I'm like, oh shoot, liberation just like took off. And I'm just looking at everything like change color. Like it seems like it felt like overnight. And I'll be honest, I felt like I neglected a little bit this year just with everything that is going on. Thinking I'm like, oh, I started a little bit late. Then we kind of got going, caught up. And then now I'm like, okay, it's on September 1st. We're going to get going. And so it looks good up there. There was a little bit of sun damage from the last two little heat waves that we've had. But, you know, we're going back up there, talk to Mr. Dusi this afternoon. We're going to go to everything that didn't change fully, like 50% color and variation. We're going to just start dropping it. Carignan looks healthy as always. It always wants to give me more than what I need. The Grenaches are looking, you know, there was a little bit of shattering going on from all the windy aspect of things that they've come through the year. But overall, I think it's going to be a good year. I think the Tempranillo is coming light again, similar to last year. But overall, I think, you know, it's for what it is, it's looking to be a pretty good year again. So
Right on. Mac, what do you see in, bud?
Well, I think overall, I think this year with all the different varieties that we have, it's great. We're seeing a couple blocks here and there where didn't respond well to the heat spikes, but we've had incredible balance, good shoot growth, a little bit of shatter, like Edgar said about with the Grenache, but you want that. I mean, you want Grenache to shatter because it's so tight. So I consider that a positive. And you know, the vines are responding well. You know, I think it looks good, looks healthy up there. The Dusi family's been doing great. And, you know, yeah, I mean, I can't complain. Cool. I mean, there's good berry size and yeah, it's all good.
Before we're cutting out here, and while I have you, Mac, did we say everything we needed to about your wine earlier? We kind of talked about it, but then we were also talking a little bit about other things. But did we hit this one?
Not really, but I'll tell you a little something about it right now.
Please do.
Yeah. So the Paper Street Red is, like I mentioned before, this is like basically how we do it is we go through every single barrel, which obviously is a lot because we get a lot of fruit out there. And we kind of mark barrels that we feel are you know, of the utmost of that vineyard quality wise. And the one thing that's so great about Paso is, you know, we can ripen pretty much anything really, really well, from Zin to the Bordeaux's to the Rhones. So for me, it's like, I don't limit myself to any one variety. It's the best of the best. Typically, because I have mostly Syrah, Grenache, and Mourvedre out there is the main varieties. It tends to be a heavy amount of that, but it's just my best barrels. And it takes, I mean, we do probably 35 different blends before we get it. Because there's so many complexities with all the different barrels and blocks and how we make it, stems, no stems, concrete, stainless, new oak, not new oak. I mean, you can imagine all the different variables that go into it. It takes a long time.
Concrete in this?
Yeah, we did concrete with Grenache and Mourvedre. We aged it. We aged a portion of the Grenache and Mourvedre in concrete. You know, very little new oak. We're not trying to take away from the purity of the vineyard. I mean, the purity of the vineyard, it speaks for itself. It's so mineral and floral, and it really is. It shows the age of the vines and the, you know, that site where the wine is very transparent at this point. It is very much like an adolescent. It's like, you know exactly how they feel when they feel it. It's transparent, meaning that it smells like it tastes. It's very much like that. And so we're using blending for complexity and to build layers and to provide some finesse, because the vineyard does have some finesse, even though we talk about it being very extreme. There's some pockets there that are really finesse. They have a lot of finesse. They have a lot of vibrancy, a lot of freshness. So
you were talking about roundness earlier, and this wine is very round. It's got this real elegant kind of plush round feel to it. But that acid, though, right at the very end is like, it just really brightens it. It's like a big glowing ball almost for a second there of this round thing that just is happening in your mouth. It's a beautiful wine. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only that, but it's also like it's such a nice combination of like a Mac wine, you know, and a Paper Street wine. So it's got elements of you and elements of the vineyard in it, which is pretty awesome. It's really, really cool to taste, and it's got your stamp on it, but it's also, you know, really, really cool from that site. So
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Right on. Right on. Matt, what do you got going on here next? Let's start wrapping this show. But are you doing any virtual tastings or anything like that? Like what's happening for you? You got bottlings or anything like
you know,
that?
we're actually going to be bottling all of our 18s. We're fortunate, and actually this is one of the ways we started hanging out with these guys too. We actually have our own bottling line, so we get to fire when ready. So we just bottled Dante. We're bottling Paper Street. My brother Joe's awesome at these like virtual tastings. Steven and I have to wrap our heads around it. But I haven't, you know, it's probably, I'm not the techie of the family by any means. But no, I mean, quite honestly, it's, I'm married to a teacher. So we're still trying to wrap our head around how school's going to work this year, Mac. I know you've been teaching Little Man and Edgar. I can only imagine you're going through this. So winery wise, I mean, it's just, we thought spring was bad. My wife and I are just talking about how harvest is going to look because, you know, it's just my brother and I here. We have our coworker, Tony, but there's just 3 of us in the cellar. And so it's going to be rough, but hopefully my marriage survives. That's what I'm kind of starting to look into some marriage counseling at the moment. Just post.
Yeah. You have extra hand sorters now.
I know. I think my mom and dad are going to hang up the cleats this year on fruit sorting. But no, it's right now we're going to finish bottling the 18 reds, and then come up with a solid harvest / homeschool plan, which will be really, really fun. But no, I don't. You know, I'm also a little superstitious. I don't like to talk about a harvest before the grapes come off, so I get a little nervous, but as of now, all systems are go. Yeah, that's the inner Cubs fan in me.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Thank you for saying it. Yeah.
Edgar,
we don't talk
what do
about
you
a
got
no-hitter
coming
while
up
no-hitter's
next?
going on, but it's been a nice, cool year. We're very happy with, even in ripening so far, variation's a little bit behind, but that last little bit of warmth that we had kicked everything up. So just even pulling in the vineyard today, I was like, holy cow. Everything's caught up. Everything's all variation ripening is even. So I'll leave it at that.
Good. Edgar, what do you got coming up next? You said you already had a couple Zoom calls and some other things. What's going on with you?
Yeah, well, I did a couple things in the morning, you know, right into the vineyard with the new latest addition to the team. Just kind of trying to stay where we're in front of things, helping our customers, I have a whole new staff. It's kind of exciting. I have a whole new team of 4 people that are helping me. 2 are helping me with the front of the house. 2 are helping me with the back of the house. And being in one location has really made life a little bit easier, but it's just like moving into a new house. You know, you gotta make sure you dial it in. You got the right things at the right place and kind of adding whatever you need of furniture pieces to the place. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great year, and the crew that I have behind me is super awesome, great attitudes, good work ethics, and I'm kind of excited to see this kind of start to roll in. We have one more small bottling coming up in a couple weeks, and that'll be sufficient enough room to accommodate everything that we're bringing in this year. So
Right on.
okay.
So for everyone also, I recently visited Edgar at his place there. He's got a new place over in an industrial park that's over by the water park, kind of, sort of, in Paso, putting in some new experiences for people to be able to visit and be outdoors. Edgar, congratulations on that space. I'm so happy for you. It looks like you're really making a really cool new home over there as you
Thank you.
home. So
Yeah, and Edgar, as more people go see your place, man, that it's going to be, I don't know if there's like a Tin City 2.0, but
Yeah.
I know you don't want that. I'm not saying that. But
I'm happy about myself over here.
I'm just saying, man, you have a great layout there, and you've done a bang up job.
No, I think you guys. I mean, you know, it's a little sad to not be able to share it with more friends and family, even family right now, just because of everything that we're experiencing. But it is feeling like a good little home. We still are trying to strive to get to the west side and be out in the country in the future. But you know, learning the hurdles of developing and not having the resources to go, you know, dump a lot of money for 3 years for permit timing frame, and then you know start developing. I needed to grow really bad like 2 years ago, and I needed room for expansion. So this commercial warehouse that we acquired last year just worked out perfect. Now I have the room to double up my production and accommodate the tasting room. And you know, I'm pretty stoked for my staff to have a really good family room where I'm sitting at, and also their office space. Everybody has their own station, and yeah, we're gonna start cracking that in next week on the yard, and you know, get it all fully. It's gonna feel like a beer garden, but it's gonna be a wine garden. So
Are you open this weekend by any chance?
yeah, we are just like everyone else, accommodating everybody by appointment. There's 4 of us, so we're trying to have 4 appointments per hour, which has been great. It's a good exercise. You know, the Tarragona that we're drinking, we only have like 3 cases on hand. So I'm thankful in a way that the shutdown occurred, because our club and everything grew the last 3 years, that like we have to make a little bit more wine. And that was the sense of urgency to get where we're at, to be able to increase a little production. So yeah, we do have, we just bottled our 18s. We're going to release it to the club this fall. I might be forced to release it to the taster room sooner than I want to, but my whole intention was to release it to the club this fall and then release it to the general public next spring. So we are open. We're here Thursday through Monday, 11 to 5, by appointment, just like everyone else, and we're doing it outside. So yeah, give us a.
I'll tell you what, everybody has some really great outdoor spaces that are on today. Over at the Glunz's space, you can really spread out. I assume appointment only as well. Edgar, you're creating this space that you can really spread out as well. And then Mac, I visited you guys, and what a great like area that you have too out in front of the tasting room, with some separate tables and umbrellas that you can really spread out. Real quick, we're running out of time. Actually, we're simply out of time, but it's okay. Whatever, on the internet. So, Mac, what do you have coming up? Man, you literally just bottled this wine.
Yeah.
What do you got going on?
We have a little bit more 2018 to bottle, so we are finalizing that. I actually got to get some 2019 in the bottle red wine. That was a sudden thing that just sparked up. So I have to do that before harvest. You know, maintaining wines. We're working on blends right now. We're assessing all the 2019 barrels. And that is always a long, arduous task. I mean, yeah, you got to start getting into them. So we're starting to do that. Most of the wines are in tank and blended and ready to go. So we have, you know, 2 or 3 weeks we can start working on that kind of stuff. And then just get the cellar ready for harvest. I know that we all talked about it being a little bit later, but you don't want to plan for that. You want to get it ready, because it could suddenly hit really quick if we get a couple warm weeks. And yeah.
What's up with the
Right on.
sparkling? Are you going to be picking soon for sparkling?
Not yet. I mean, it's been cool along the coast. So I would say we're probably 2, maybe 3 weeks away. Yeah. We're about 3 weeks away. Maybe at the end of August. That's what we're assuming. But yeah, and we're only doing about 3 to 5 tons for sparkling. So, but yeah, you know, just getting ready for harvest, finishing the 18 wines, bottling the 19 whites and a little bit of 19 red for distribution, and clean. Get ready for harvest. We all do. You know. So
so some of the future shows that's coming up, we are going to do a getting ready for harvest show to explain what that means to our audience. When these guys say they're getting ready for harvest, I want to try to bring that to light on one of these hangouts. We'll also actually, if of all things, Matt, you were mentioning sparkling wine. we might be doing a sparkling wine show here as well, because we have a producer in town who's become a really great resource for some brands who want to make sparkling wine and try to keep it a little bit more local. The next show, though, I will tell you, next week, on Thursday of next week, I'm not doing a show. I'm going to be camping with my kids, completely away from everybody with no internet or anything like that. And so, yeah, there's no show. But on the 27th, though, we come back with a show about PR and wine PR. We have two journalists, Matt Ketman with the Wine Enthusiast magazine, as well as Patrick Comiskey. He writes for Wine and Spirits, and a PR out of New York who happens to be one of our contractors, Stephanie Tuin, with the pulse on everything PR here nationally and internationally. And we're going to talk about wine PR and what that means. It's what I do, right? And so I'm just excited to have that conversation with them on the 27th. Thank you guys so much, Edgar, Mac.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Cheers, boys.
Right on. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
So please visit pasowine.com or follow us on Instagram or Facebook to be able to see when the upcoming shows are and who's going to be on there. You can watch past shows on pasowine.com, and on there, when you go to the Zoom Hangout portion of it all, like I said, you can watch past shows, and you can also see where the future shows are coming up. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Right on. Later.
Boys.